Okay, live stream starting in a few minutes. Just cutting the audio. That. And welcome to the live stream. So this is a customer build number 9. We are, well, I am building the new system. If you haven't built the system before, I'm going to show you exactly what you're going to need to build the system, as well as what you're going to require for hardware as well as tools. Tools are going to be very simple. So let's switch over to the overhead. Let me bring the overhead in. And let me put it over to overhead, which is 2. Turn this on, there we go. All right, so this time I came prepared a little more. I have actually have garbage below my desk this time around, so it'll be a little easier to clean up later. All right, so what you're gonna need a knife, you're gonna need a pair of pliers, cutters, you're gonna need a screwdriver of some sorts, a bunch of cable ties, and that's all you're gonna really need, and maybe a small screwdriver for the, which I have an iFixit kit for the small screwdriver for the M.2 drive. We may require this as well as for the little screw downs for the motherboard, the little tack downs. So I'm gonna put this away, and I'm gonna go on to the parts. So the part list today, we got an NVMe hard drive, 500 gigabyte. This is a PCIe 3.0, not a 4.0. This machine is not a really fast machine, so it does not need anything more than that. It is an AMD Ryzen 5000 series. This is not the 7000 series. The 7000 series just released, and it is not for this customer, but it does have built-in 8 Radeon graphics. RAM, 2 8 gigabyte sticks, which is 16 gigs total of Corsair Vengeance memory, LPX. It's 3200 megahertz speed, by the way, it should be. It is, well, it should be on there somewhere. All right, so Gigabyte B450M DS3H, that's the motherboard. And power supply is a EVGA 650 watt bronze power supply. It's a decent power supply. I think this one's semi-modular, so we might have to keep the cables off to the side when we're ready to do that. So let's start with the motherboard, and we will start with putting everything onto the motherboard, which is going to be this, and that. So let's get the motherboard out of the box. Of course, it is taped. Take the motherboard out. Got SATA cables that come with it. We're not going to need those because we have an M.2, and that goes directly on the motherboard itself. This is the motherboard. Below that is going to be the I/O shield, the manual, and the other small manual. We don't really need that, so we're just going to put that away. This down. It'll build right on top of the box. I'm going to take the anti-static bag off. Sorry about the crumbling. It'll be a sec. Do not put the bag underneath. The bag, the outside of the bag is not anti-static. Only the inside of the bag is anti-static. So you don't need that. You can take that out of there. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the processor first. So we're going to take the processor out of the box. That out. This is garbage. This is the cooling solution, which is basically your heat sink and power and your fan. We're going to leave this in the box for right now until we get the processor in the socket, manual, which you really don't need, and then the processor itself in its little clamshell. The 5000 series has pins. The new series, the 7000 series, will not have pins. So you may not have to be as careful with this, but you probably should be right now, so if you're going to go with the 5000 series. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to line up the processor. You're going to find the arrow on the processor, which is located down here in the corner. And you're going to match it with the arrow on the motherboard, which is located in the bottom left, top left corner of the motherboard. So you're going to take this out of its clamshell carefully without dropping it. Hopefully, there we go. And you're going to line that up with the proper arrow to the arrow, which is the upper left. And we're going to drop that right in its socket. Should just drop straight in. There should be no pressure. If you're really pushing hard on this, then you are going to bend pins, and that would be a very bad day for you. So let's try not to do that. I'm just going to push down with one hand and just lift down the arm. Flip down the arm, I mean. This is just garbage. If you guys want the stickers, you could put the stickers on the case. We don't do it because we run mostly business machines, so nobody really cares for the stickers. So we're going to put the cooler on next. The cooler, if you open it up, it only goes on one way. It's got a plastic top. You can take that out of the way. And the bottom of it's very careful. It's got, if you can see in the camera, it's got a little bit of a gray circle there going. That is the thermal paste that's been pre-applied. Just do not touch that. If you do touch that, you will need to reapply it because it will probably get all messed up. I'm not sure if you can, the camera barely can see this. It's a very thin thermal paste. There's not much there. If you have your own thermal paste, you would wipe this thermal paste off and you can use that. You would just apply it to the processor itself and you put a little bit, you put basically like a pea-sized drop of it right in the middle, and then you can just put it on. Now, if you could tell that these have screws, and this is obviously a bracket that's in our way, so we're gonna take that bracket out. I'm gonna take the screwdriver, unscrew it. This comes off. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to line this up. What we're not going to do is we're not going to put this way because you're going to block your RAM socket or get really too close to it. So we're going to put it the other way, and it's going to be away from the RAM socket in a nice clear area. And we're just going to drop this onto the motherboard in the 4 screw spots. You're going to hold it down, screw one side, screw the opposite side, and then go to the opposite side of that one, and go to the other one. You can give it a little screw first just to get it started, and then go all the way back down for the remaining, just to get it nicely in place. If this is your first time building a unit, do not use an electric screwdriver. Use a regular hand screwdriver, just so that you don't have to avoid overscrewing or misthreading a screw. That would be really bad for you. So at this point, power cord, you just plug the power cord into the one that's the CPU at the top. It is labeled CPU. If you look at the motherboard, it says CPU fan. Yeah, it does say CPU fan. You can read it there. Now, RAM is going to be next, so we're going to take the RAM out of the box without stabbing yourself. There we go. RAM is out. That is garbage. That's also garbage. And to get one stick at a time. Now obviously this memory has a little plastic piece on top, so you're going to rip that plastic piece off. Now pull that. And you're going to find the first socket to put it into. They are labeled on the motherboard DDR4, 2, 3, 1. You're going to match the pairs. So you're going to match the sockets. So in other words, if you use gray sockets, you're going to use gray sockets or black sockets. You will not use gray-black because then it's not going to be in dual channel mode. You want dual channel mode since this is DDR4. So you're going to want to do that. With DDR5, you're not going to need to do that. DDR5, you will not have to match pairs. But with DDR4, you do. And in this case, we are using DDR4. So we are going to do that. Again, repeat the same process. Rip off the plastic piece here. And then you're going to line it up with the socket and drop it into the socket. These are notched, so you would only be able to put them in one way. If you're pushing too hard, then you are doing it wrong. Flip it around, it probably needs to be pushed down the other way. Get the cable in place, put the cable underneath, just try to manage this cable a little bit better. Just keep it out of the way. If you can. If you can't, you just leave it. There's a way to get around here somewhere. It's probably just not agreeing. All right, I'll do it when I get in the case. So anyway, let's also do the last thing on the motherboard, which is going to be our SSD. In this case, this NVMe drive. And we're just going to open up the box. And toss this in the garbage. There we go. Obviously comes in a clamshell. There may be a screw in here, so just be careful. We do not need the screw since the motherboard comes with one. But if your motherboard does not have one, they do provide you a screw. Throw the manual away. We're just going to take this out. We're going to put it on the table. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to keep the screw for another day because I can always use those screws just in case we lose one. It's going to go into this socket right here. The screw's already in there, so we're going to just take that screw out with a small screwdriver. And once this comes out, which is not, that's way too small. Ooh. That's a little better. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Take the screw out. Do not lose the screw, obviously. Now when this goes in, what you're going to do is you're going to take the NVMe drive, you're going to put it on an angle at a 45-degree angle approximately, and then slide it into the socket. It should just slide in nicely. And then you should be able to push that down into the socket fully. And you'll want to put the screw at the end of the socket. Screw it in. Make sure it's nice and tight. Not too tight, but just tight. And that's all you have to do for the motherboard. The motherboard at this point is complete. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the system, but I'm going to clean up a little bit here. So just give me 5 seconds. Let me throw out some of this junk. You can keep all of these like screws and stuff for the motherboard if you want to, if you're going to switch your cooling solution. Most people don't, so you're probably not going to need this, so you can probably ditch it. But if you want, you can make a separate box for all that junk. All right, so we'll move that off to the side. We're going to move the motherboard out of the way. We're going to bring the case up. The case is very large, so bear with me for a second. I'm going to switch cameras because it's more important to see the bigger part of the case. This case is a little larger. This is a Thermaltake V100. This thing is a little bit big for what it is, and it is not our normal H17. This is a little larger than the H17. It has a little more breathing room. It has another, I think it has another few fans on the front that you can use. I'm going to just take off all of the side panels right now, just so we can kind of move on here. But I just want to give you kind of a relational size here. This is a little bit bigger than the H17. So, and it's got vented sides, which work pretty well. Not vented on both sides, it's only vented on one side. It's on the side of the processor, which is the most important to be vented on, just to allow more air through. It comes with another filter, screen filter, which I have no idea where this goes because this was just inside the case. So I think this was a mistake because it doesn't fit up, unless it fits up here. No, it doesn't really fit up here. There's already a screen filter up here. So yeah, that's a weird one. I don't know why there's another one. Maybe, well, let's build and we'll see where it goes. Maybe it's further down or something. Or maybe it just accidentally ended up in this case and doesn't belong here. Screw bag with obviously some screws and some wire ties. And I'm just prepping the front panel, which I'm just taking some of the front panel apart and out. And then I'm going to flip this down so we can take a look more from the overhead and be able to put in all the rest of the stuff. Of course, this is a little longer case, so I'm going to move the motherboard out of the way just because I know myself and I may end up damaging something, and I don't want to do that. So let's put that over there for now. Okay, so let's switch back over to camera 2. And we're going to put this downwards. There we go. Yeah, this is pretty big, so it may not fit all on camera. Maybe we might. Okay, so let's put myself back up, but down in the corner over here. Okay, so these are the front panel leads. You're going to have a USB 3.0, USB 2.0, your HD audio, and your other connectors in the front. Ha ha ha, extra parts, someone said. Yeah, I'm hoping not. I'm hoping there are no. There's not supposed to be extra parts. This is the first time, well, actually, no, it's like the third time we've used this case, but I have never seen that screen before, so I don't know why that's in here. I have a feeling maybe, you know, Thermaltake doesn't really have the best QC when it comes to, you know, their cases, so I'm not really shocked that we have something in here that we're not supposed to have. So it's happened before. I'm just going to let this go at this point. We'll just see if there's a section for it. If there is a section for it, I'll put it in. But even the bottom part of the case, no, the bottom part of the case already has a filter on it. And there's already a filter at the top. And there are no filters for the front because the front is intake. Well, it should really actually have something for the front, but it doesn't have one. Maybe it fits in the front. No, there's a soft piece here. And there's an air gap, so there's no need for that. It doesn't fit the same gap. All right, anyways, long story short, moving on. Let's get on to like the here we go. So we're gonna put the motherboard in. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna double check to make sure all of these standoffs for the motherboard, yeah, I can't point. There. We're gonna make sure they all fit the correct one, which I'm gonna see if it does. I don't know why there's actually, if I remember correctly, they don't usually put the standoffs in. So maybe this case was opened. I don't know. It came from Micro Center, but it shouldn't be opened. Everybody can now curse me because I almost forgot the I/O shield, and this happens every time. So I/O shield, this has to go in first before you put the motherboard in. Just be very careful, this is a little sharp. I always forget it, and I almost did again. So, you know, no one yelled at me in chat either, which is shocking, because usually most people yell at me. I'm like, oh, I/O shield, I forgot the I/O shield. All right, so, the other way. Obviously everything's labeled on this one, it's pretty nice. You just want to double check for any type of like little hooks or anything that are in the way, which this one doesn't happen to have any, so it's fine. We can just slip this right in to the front part of, actually the back part of the case, I'm sorry, the back part of the case. And just line it up and just push it straight in. If it wants to go, which it does not want to go. Come on. Come on. Yeah, there we go. It should just pop in place. It shouldn't take too much pressure. I'm pushing a little harder than normal because this one's a little bit wobbly a little, so it's fine. Now we're going to check the standoffs. So we're going to check the standoffs. You're going to take the motherboard. You put the motherboard off to the side here, and you can just gently put it down. You need to figure out where the screw holes line up. So we're going to say this one, these are the two over here, so we need one here, and we're going to need one down here, because this doesn't line up with that, it lines up this way, so it's down further. So this one, that one, that one, that one, and we don't need that one. That one can come out, I think, yeah. That one also can come out. So we're going to take this over here, put it back over here, just on a temporary spot. We're going to take these two out, which I am not going to get with my hand. So, did it come with extra ones? Yes, it did. Let's see. Let's see. It came with a lot of fun stuff. We got some wire ties that we can put off to the side. We don't need these. Oh, don't ever use these stupid wire ties, the ones that have metal in them. Be careful, throw those out. You don't want metal rummaging around in your case. It's not good. Those darn rummagers. Plastic, garbage. Screws. Let's see where we got. We got We got a few screws. Okay, we got a few standoffs in here. I could probably use these. Oh, I can use those. I don't want to take these out of the case if they're... Yeah, they're really in there. So we'll just use the new ones. So put this off to the side. Let me throw the plastic and put all those screws down. Do I have a tray? I had a tray. Where's my tray? Oh, it's underneath there. I always have a screw tray available. Do not just go putting the screws on the table. I have a bad habit of doing that and then they end up all over the place. So use a screw tray. I mean, this one happens to be one for my Fix-It. You can use any one. Well, you can even use a paper plate. I mean, if you really, you know, you don't have to go crazy here. We're gonna use these standoffs, those metal ones, the gold ones. It comes with 2 more thumb screws, I guess, for something else that we don't really need. And we're gonna have some screws for the motherboard. I'm just checking which one it is. This looks like, it might be the thin type screw. Let's just double check. I'm just gonna see if it goes in. Yeah, this one lines up good. Okay. So it's really, so it's really this small itty bitty screw here. This one's this type for this motherboard. It's a very thin screw. Looks like a screw that it's very mechanically threaded. It's very small, very, very small. So that's the one for the motherboard. And that's what we're gonna use throughout all the rest of them. We're gonna first get the all of the standoffs correctly put in, which we're gonna use a little nut driver for that. Use the nut driver, and we're just going to push that into there. Just screw it in. Be sure these are nice and tight, not too tight that you strip them, but enough that it just, you know, stays in place. We're going to put another one over here. So we're just going to line it. We're just basically feeding this into the screw holder and then screwing it in. It's just a little tool. You could do this with a pair of pliers too. If you don't have this, you know, fancy looking tool, you don't need a fancy looking tool. You just need a pair of pliers. You can do it with a pair of pliers as well. It's just very small, and I just like to use the tool if we have it. Gets me a little more grip. If you do use pliers, be careful not to scratch your surface. You know, you don't want to do that. But no one's going to probably see it anyway, so it's okay. Let's move on. So let's get the motherboard in place. What is this up here? See some garbage. No, that's just a rounded corner. Okay. Let's get the motherboard in place. So I'm going to take the motherboard. You're going to count out how many screws you have here. In this case, we have 6. So we're going to be screwing 6 screws. You always make sure to count up all of the bottom, you know, bottom supports. If you have more supports down here than you have screws up here, or the vice versa, you may need to take the motherboard back out and then figure out which ones you misplaced and take them apart, because you don't want to ground out your motherboard. You don't want to have any metal behind it, and you also don't want to have missing support as well, which the missing support would be actually pretty bad, because then it could ground against the case. I'm going to line up with the I/O shield in the back. That's what I'm doing right now. And then I'm just going to push it forward into place, which if I can do that, there we go. And I can see the gold screw downs, so we're just going to do that. We're going to screw these down one at a time. I always go for the middle one here first, just because it's the easiest one to get. And it'll hold the board forward, so you don't have to keep holding the board. You can now just screw in the other ones freely. Yeah, you can see that. Top part of the board, there's one up here as well. Let me get that one first, because I can see that one. Again, you should count your screws. If this is the first time you're doing this, make sure to count the screws. Make sure you have the right amount of screws screwed in. If you don't, stop, you know, go back and find out which one you missed. If you can find out from the top, then great. If not, then you might have to take the motherboard out. I'm gonna get up here and try to see if I can see from the top here, because this is a really large case. There we go. There we go. Yeah, it's latched. That metal is really a little flimsy for this case. All right. I got 2 more screws here. Just to make sure I get the right one. Yep. And one. And next one. Again, if you're doing this for the first time, I don't recommend using an electric screwdriver. I recommend you use just a regular screwdriver, just so it's a little easier for you to screw things in, and you don't end up stripping any screws or having any problems like that. All right, that's all installed. We're ready for the power supply, I think. Yep. Normally, by the way, if you do have SSDs or NVMe SSDs or regular hard drives, they would go over here. So you can mount them here from the opposite side. You could also mount a 5 1/4 somewhere. No, 5 1/4 is up here at the top. You do have a little bit of room for that. It also has, I think, a 3 1/2 on the other side too. You could also mount a regular drive the opposite way, this way, I think, and it'll allow you to put the screws in that way if you have a mechanical disc or not. The mechanical discs, I think, also have availability on the back side. Let me flip this around. And I almost spilt all the screws. I almost did it. I knew it. Back side. Yeah, the back side on the bottom, which I'm going to show you guys in 1 second. I'll just dip these cables in for now. That also has 3 1/2 inch base, which are down here. I don't know if you can't see that. Probably not. All right. So there we go. So the power supply goes here, and then you got these bays here for 3 1/2 inch drives. You could also put an SSD on here, 2 1/2 inch drive as well. It has the little screws for it, so it even marks 2 1/2. This one is 3 1/2. 3 1/2 is like your regular, like, main mechanical drive. You know, if you want to do a spinning rust drive, you can do that. They slide in, and you got 2 bays there. Actually, you could probably even fit a 3rd one down here if you're really adventurous. You could do that. So let's get the power supply in. This is a big one. All right. So this is an EVGA 650 watt power supply, 80 plus bronze. Let's pull this apart. Let's get that out. And let's also just change this back. I don't like that. There we go. So, garbage. Plastic is garbage. Should be able to open this. Of course, they sealed it twice. EVGA is good about that. Do not cut towards yourself like I am doing now. That is not a good idea. All right. Manual. No one reads that. All right. This is semi-modular. So we're going to have some modular cables and some cables that are not. This is a power cord. Just put the power cord off to the side. The customer will need that. This is also just a power on connector for the motherboard. You would connect this if you're doing like custom water loop cooling or anything like that, where you need to turn the pump on without turning the computer on. This will allow you to do that. It's just a little connector. Some Velcro ties. I don't recommend Velcro ties inside your computer, so use these somewhere else. Garbage. Okay, power supply. Take that out. Cable box, we don't need that. All right. It's just wrapped so many times. All right. Here we go. So this is semi-modular. So in other words, the cables for the motherboard are already attached, but your peripheral cables, like for your VGA and for your, well, maybe some VGA connections, as well as some SATA connections, that is all separate. So you have another set of cables for that will plug in directly into here. Not sure if you guys can see this. This is way close, but we'll try. Here we go. So, you know, everything's pretty much labeled here. So if you need another CPU connection, you can connect that in. You got some VGA connections if you want. You also have some peripheral connections and SATA connections. So always match these up and never lose your cables. If you have cables for this, please don't lose your cables. If you lose your cables, you will have to contact the main manufacturer for your power supply and get new cables. They are not the same cables for each power supply. So you may have to go directly to EVGA, tell them the model number you have, and get new cables if that's the case. Again, probably best don't lose them in the first place. Let's go back to here. There we go. So power supply goes down here. This is a vent over here on the bottom. If you can see it, there's like a little bit of a mesh panel here. So the mesh panel itself is used for air intake. So what you're going to do is you're going to have the fan facing the bottom. So this fan is going to face downwards. So it breathes from the bottom and pulls in fresh air from the bottom. We're going to now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take the wire tie off of this first and check what peripherals I need to connect, which in this case I don't think are really anything. I may not even need any of this. Let me just double check here. Yeah, just a regular computer. This is the regular motherboard, and that's PCIe. And this one's the CPU. So you're going to need this. You're going to need that. This does not have a graphic card, so you don't need anything more than that. They do have a connected one for PCIe. PCIe is for the one for the graphic card itself. We don't have one, so we're just going to keep that off to the side. So we don't need to plug any of this in, actually, which is good. So we'll just keep that at the bottom, but I'm going to put this off to the side for now. I'm going to probably put it into one of these little bays here just to keep it out of the way. Now, let's slide this in. So slide in, and you're going to slide it back to the back part of the case. Back part of the case is this way. So just to let you know. So it's going to slide in, slide out. And the screws that come with this are in the little pouch with the power on adapter. To give you an idea, this is the power. This is just the 24-pin connector. It has one little wire jumpered, and that basically turns on the computer without having to plug it into the motherboard. That's again if you're doing custom water cooling. If you're doing custom water cooling, we may do a video like a few series from now from custom water cooling if somebody really wants it, but it is a lot of maintenance. So, and I'm talking about custom water loops, not all-in-one water cooling. There is a difference. All-in-one water cooling is pretty easy. There's no maintenance pretty much at all. But with custom loops, like custom hard loops, or even custom loops that are not hard loops, that are just basically like soft tubing, they are difficult to maintain. You have to like clean them pretty much almost every year. You got to swap the water out. It's a real pain in the butt. So I don't know how many people really want to do that. I know our customers really, every time I recommend it, every time a customer asks me about it and I tell them the amount of maintenance schedule, they pretty much shy away from it, and you get about the same performance with a non-custom loop. So if you just go with an AIO loop, you can do that. Prices for an AIO loop will be a lot cheaper, all-in-one water cooling. All-in-one water loop, actually, whatever it is. So it's basically, you know, a lot easier. There's almost no maintenance on that. You just have to basically make sure that you install it correctly. Did I miss a screw? No, I did not. By the way, if you're building this unit, you may want to build it upwards. I built it this way because so you guys can see most of the angles, but it is easier to build it up and down. Just because you'll not be fighting gravity at that point, which I am. So, is my battery out? There we go. That's just stuck. All right, so you know you'll have a little easier way of getting this into the power supply. There's only 4 screws on the back of this. They should all line up. And if you don't miss it, nope, there it is. Is that it? Oh. Wrong hole. No. Okay, something's misaligned. I'm going to put this case a little bit further up. It's a little harder. Wow, it's really on there. It's a little harder to do it this way. Looks like the screws are just misaligned a little bit. I'll take this a little bit out. Take this out a little bit. This is why it's better to not fight gravity on this. and just do it the right way without it messing with you. I was right the first time. I had the wrong, the wrong hole. That goes here. Okay. There we go. That's better. Let's re-screw in. All right. Once that's in, it's solid. You don't have to worry about that. Now we just have to bring all the cables up. So we got a few different cables here. We got obviously the CPU cable, which says CPU here. That's going to go all the way up in this top corner. Can't see that. Move this down a little bit. It's going to go up in this top corner because that's where the opposite side of the board is for that. So the CPU one. First of all, make sure it's untangled from all the rest of the wires before you run all these, because if it's all tangled up, you're just going to have to untangle it later. So this should fit in here. Slide that in. This one, which is for your main power for your motherboard, that's right here. So I'm just going to slip it through this hole. And that's all you need. The one for the PCI Express for the graphic card, we don't have one. So we're just going to tuck that away for now. I am going to tie it back up, but right now I just want to kind of get it out of my way. So those two are the only ones going through. We're going to flip this back over. Okay. Flip this back over. Gently put it back down. Okay, so the motherboard comes out right here. I'm just going to pull that up a little bit. Give it a little more torque. Tighten the cable down. This obviously has a 24 pin, so you're going to 26 pin, so you're going to have to hold that down, and you just basically slide that into place on the motherboard. When you put it onto the motherboard, it has a clip. It only goes one direction, and this is also keyed. So if you start pushing and it's not going in, then you've got it the wrong way. Flip it over, or you could just take a look for the key and then match up the key to the notch, and well, I should say not key, I'm sorry. The clip to the notch, and just put the clip over the notch, and it should click in. So the clip should click in. Same thing for the top up here. You want to do the same thing. You want to take this, and you want to plug it straight into the motherboard. I don't know if you can see that. Let me go move over a little here. Also make sure you have it the right direction, which I just totally almost went the wrong direction. By the way, it will not fit in, so if it goes the wrong direction, then you know you've got something wrong. Again, just flip it over. These are black connectors, so they're really hard to see. If you need be, you probably need a light, because I'm going to need one probably in a second. If I can't get this in here. I am blind. Going in blind. Yeah, the clip is on this side, so I am going the right way. I just can't see what I'm doing. So let's hit some light on. If you need a flashlight, get a flashlight. I just happen to have a studio light here, but you can use any light you want. And that clips right in. Ooh. And yeah, so basically this is nicely pushed in, this is pushed in. You should be able to pull this back and it shouldn't fall out. If it falls out, then you know you need to put it back in the proper way. I'm gonna hit that off. Okay. Someone said, made it, awesome. Really glad to see you. So what did I forget? I always forget these little cables. So let's put these power connectors in. This is the power connector for the fan in the back. This is for the exhaust fan. This is out. This, by the way, this is the back of the unit. And this is basically for your exhaust to pull air from the front all the way towards the back. So we're just going to take the little stupid plastic, the little metal clip tie off. Undo that. You're going to find this. This is a 3-pin. Yeah. That is a 3. You go down here. It's a 3-pin fan connector. It's going to connect to the back part of the motherboard over here where it says chassis fan, I think. No, it says system fan, but that's fine. System fan or chassis fan, that's okay. Just as long as it doesn't say pump, you're okay. Because if it says pump, then you've got the wrong one. Now it should line up If it's a 3-pin, it's going to have one pin obviously hanging off. That is okay. It should just only slide in one direction. Once it's slid in, you're done. Just plug it in, make sure it doesn't come back out, which it isn't. I'm going to tie that up in a minute. I'm going to get the other cables in first before I start doing the tie-up. You can do the tie-up as you go. If you don't want to do that, you can do the tie-up last. I'm going to do the tie-up last just because I've already built in this case before. I kind of know where the ins and outs are. I'm just going to do a quick tie-up, but we're going to plug in the oh, this is the USB 3.0? Is it 3 point, actually 3.1 I think. Nope, 3.0. USB 3.0 header, that's going to the front of the motherboard, front of the case up at the top. So that's for your like USB front board connectors. You have to connect this down to the motherboard, which is going to be the one that says USB 3.0. Plug it in. It only fits in one way. If you're pushing too hard and it's not going in, stop, because you're probably bending a pin, so you don't want to bend a pin. The worst thing to do is bend pins, especially with these connectors. They are very sensitive. You will end up breaking a pin or having more of a problem. This one says HD audio. That's hard to read, but it's there. It's HD audio. It has one little block out. That goes down to the one that says F audio, or front panel audio. That's what that stands for, which is bottom left. That's always going to be under your PCIe sockets, usually. They are labeled. It says F USB 1, F USB 2. That one says F audio. So front panel audio, front panel USB. That's what that stands for. Same thing here. This one is USB, and it has a knockout. So you just follow the knockout to the right blocked pin and just plug it in. It only fits one way. So again, just push gently. They should go right on. Now, the front panel connectors are a little harder. These are a pain. Most people do not like these stupid things. So, to do this, it's really not that hard. It is harder than the other one, but it's not that hard. So, they are labeled. Ooh, there we go. Reset, power, HDD, and power LED. So, okay, the only ones that are really important to find out which direction they go are the LEDs. The buttons don't matter. So the buttons, you can put them any direction you want, but the ones that are LEDs have little positive, negative. Positive goes to the positive side, negative goes to the negative side. Your motherboard will have it written down here. This is really hard to read. I don't know if you guys can even see this thing. This is probably not going to come out. Anyway, it's way down here in little white lettering that says HDD, reset, power, and power LED. So, and now it says HDD, but it says plus negative, so plus goes first. So we're going to put plus to the left, and then reset is right next to it. These are in the manual too, so if you get really lost and you can't read the motherboard, and you don't have a magnifying glass, then just use, the manual. The manual should have all this written out, but these are also kind of in the same order every time. So that's why it's not that difficult. If you've done one, you've done them all. Just plug that in. And then power LED is the last one, which I know is positive, negative the other way. That would help if Brian lines it up. There we go. Positive, negative. This won't destroy the LED if you plug it in the wrong way. So if you plug it in the wrong way, don't leave it though, because if you leave it for a very long time, you may heat up the cable a little bit, and that might not be good. But that was with the old units. I think with the new units, it just doesn't turn on. So you might want to just check the LED. If it's on, great. If it doesn't come on, then go back and reverse it. You probably have it the wrong way, or you have it on the wrong pins. Better yet. So just double check the manual, make sure you got it the right way, and do it right the first time. If you can. So this case doesn't have any air intake, which kind of sucks. Most of the time, if you do have this type of case and you're going to run it for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's a little more hotter climate, you would want to put maybe just 1 or 2 fans on the front just to have air intake. Be sure to always do intake from the front, exhaust through the back, exhaust through the top. I don't know if you can see my hand up there. This is the top. So exhaust through the top. If you're exhausting through the top, take the filter off the top, because you don't need the filter if it's exhausting. So if you're exhausting air out the top, take the filter off. That's just stupid, because you're just putting more, resistance to the airflow going out. But if you're not doing that, if you're not exhausting on the top, which we're not, we're gonna leave the filter up there because we don't wanna have anybody drop anything into the case. That would be really bad. So let's start tying things up. I'm just gonna start tying from the top, going down. I'm just gonna tie all of this together and then I'm gonna tie it back because I'm not very happy with how much, they have so much power lead here. Like, this is ridiculous. There's too much cable here for this. This is stupid. I don't know if this is supposed to go down and underneath and come back up. Maybe that's why this isn't. No, you just put it back this way. I'm gonna just tie it back that way because there's no glass front panel, but if there was a glass panel, I would have probably reran all these wires back, behind, down, and underneath, and up and around. That would probably, because they're so long, that would make more sense. But in this case, we're not have a glass panel, so I'm just going to go with what we already got, because we already plugged everything in. And I'm just going to tie it to the front part of the case, which is fine. But if you have a paneled, you know, like an actual, you know, glass panel or something like that, you'll want to, you know, cable manage a little bit better. And you'll want to have a little bit more wires pushed back and not very much seen. Most people don't want to see the wires. Most people want to see like the rest of the components and stuff like that. So I'm just going to tie these. Wow. Yeah, this is a lot. There's a lot here. Okay. It's fine. Let me just tie this and then tie it to the back portion. Tie it over here. Most important thing of why you want to push these down is so that just in case you install a graphic card later, you will have clear space here. You don't want any of these wires to interfere with the graphic cards. The newer graphic cards have gotten even chunkier, so you're going to have some problems with fitting all of these wires plus the graphic card itself in this little area. Now this motherboard is a very small motherboard. If you're going with a higher end graphic card, you're going to want a longer motherboard because you're going to want that extra space here, because you're going to have, most cards are going to take up about at least 3 of these back sockets, so that's going to really interfere with these cables and you're going to have to pull these cables way down. It's going to get really tight in here, even if it's a really large case. I would recommend you go with a longer motherboard, maybe a full ATX motherboard. This is a microATX motherboard. This is a little smaller, but you don't need that. Again, don't need, this is, you shop for what you need. Don't shop for what you're going to prepare for, because maybe you might end up changing the whole system before that even happens. And in that case, you would have wasted money and time. So I would just recommend shop for what you need. If you're going to say, oh, I'm going to definitely want a graphic card in here that's going to be a really big graphic card, then think about it. Then say, okay, maybe get a better motherboard. You would get also a better motherboard anyway, because this motherboard is not bad, but it's not the highest end that you're going to be able to get. You're not going to get the full experience out of that graphic card and this motherboard. This is a more business motherboard. If you're looking for higher end stuff, you're going to want a little more expensive motherboard. You're going to want something that has a little more features. This does not really have that many features for that, but again, you build for what you need. Don't build, you know, for everything else that's just not there. Let me also just tie this one down. What I did, if you noticed, I just unplugged it to tie it up, because I know that it's only so much space to get down to there, and that's all we really need. If you don't know how much space you need and how much wiring you could have, then don't tie it this way. Just put it down and then just ravel up the wire and then, you know, tie it up after that. But if you do know, then you don't need to have to guess. You can just do this up here and then push it down. Get rid of that. Let's put this in here. And of course, wrong hand. And there we go. Now what you want to do is just tuck the wires underneath or out of the way so they don't get stuck in the fan. So just push them out of the way so they stay down. Same thing with this one. I don't know why this one is so short. This is another weird thing. We'll just tie it up there a little bit. Let's try to train it that way. And that's not going to go. I'm going to tie it up to the top one, just to keep it away from the fans. The whole main objective here is just to keep it away from the fans. If you have, again, if you have a glass case, you want to go a little more nuts with this. You want to make sure that every wire is run the right direction. You want to make sure every wire is possibly hidden. as much as possible. But for now, our purposes, let's just get it going. That's good for this down here. That's fine. Shrouds there. I'm going to flip this back over. And we're going to just cable manage a little bit on this side. Now, I didn't turn this the right way, but whatever, because I want to show you guys where this is going. This is basically going to be pulled back. You want to put this downwards and pushed into that spot there. And it's going to get cable managed to these little screw hole, this little tack down like tie points along those areas. We're going to use some more ties because we're out of those. Don't be afraid to use ties to tie down the cables a little more. I know a lot of my technicians that I work with really get mad at how many ties that I use, but I would prefer things to be tied down so they're nice and easy, they're out of the way, they're not in your way constantly, you know, and you can always, you know, ties are cheap, you know, not a big deal, you know, and it's better to use one more tie than one less tie and have the stupid cable end up coming all, you know, going all the way back just because it hits a fan or something and starts grinding against the fan, you know, which would be really, really bad. Yeah, that's all right. Okay, so this one's a little short. Oh, I think, oh no, maybe it isn't. It's just I didn't pull it back. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this back. I'm gonna lay this down into here. Put that into the channel here if I can. Can I put that into the channel? There's no tie down. Maybe they want to go this way. Yeah, they want you to go this way. Okay, so that's dumb, but all right, fine. You know, just push it down a little bit and then get it. What you're going to tie down to is there. So we're just going to slip one wire tie between that. If you want to see a little trick, you can push this wire tie and make it look into like a little clamp, a little slidey clamp, and just slide it underneath, and it helps it to push it up, so you don't end up burying the tie clip into the back of the motherboard, which is pointless. So just screw that down, just tie that down. I'm just gonna push it down a little bit. There we go. I'm gonna put one more here, just because that's there. Screw it in, there we go. I had to check the other side of the case. This is weird that there's no room on this side. Usually there's a lot of room on this side. Just check this. Oh, there's a bump. Okay. There's a bump on the other side of the case that allows you to have a little more room. All right, so that's fine. So this should be okay. Just want to make sure we can close the case, you know. Cut the little tails off. Throw the tails out. Now, normally at this point you would take this and put this in here. I'm not going to put this in here yet because I got to like wire tie all this up and make it look a little nicer. And I'm going to put it all the way at the bottom. But for now purposes, you should put this down here and leave that down there. Do not lose your modular connections. I'm going to boot this though. So let's boot this up because at this point we're ready to go. And hopefully everything won't break. I mean, will work. And we'll see. Let's see. I'm going to put this back to me and flip this out of the way because this is going to get in my way. And let's put this up. You see there is a mesh panel at the top. I'm going to leave the mesh panel at the top. It's magnetic. But if you are venting out the top, be sure to take the thing off. So, where are we at? Let's see. Let's plug in everything. Just gonna plug it in the back. Gonna plug the HDMI in. Keyboard and mouse I have over there, which I just forgot to bring over here. Okay, keyboard and mouse. Keyboard and mouse. Where's my USB flash disk? Oh, you know, one of these days I will have everything in one spot. It'll be a miracle, and that day is not today. So, I'm gonna go grab the USB flash disk. Bear with me for 2 seconds while I go grab that, because I thought I brought it over, yet I did not. By the way, there was still no spot for this, which is another mesh panel. Oh, maybe it's for the back. No, it doesn't fit. It's too big. I don't know. This was not supposed to be in there, I think. So that's another conversation for another day. Let me go grab the flash drive. Be right back. Bear with me for 2 seconds. Not going too far. I just totally forgot it. And it's over here. Yep, right where I left it. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I have a flash drive ready with all the drivers, Windows, all that fun stuff already preloaded on it. Saved a lot of time sometimes. All right. Okay, so we're plugged up? Yes. All right, the power switch is on the bottom for the on. I'm going to switch over to that connection, which is looking horrible. Look at that, that's horrible. Okay, let's power it on. Power on. Hey, it didn't blow up, so that's a good sign. Alrighty, this may take a little bit of time. This is an AMD processor, so it does take a little longer to boot up. Gotta give it a patience, hopefully. And today, oh boy. Give it a minute. There we go. So, it's new CPU installed. It says, let me go to the program here so I can actually read that. It says new CPU installed, TFTPM, NV corrupted, or no structure change. Okay, it's not corrupted, it just means that that's changed because it's a brand new processor. So it hasn't detected a processor at this point. So basically we have to log in and do our magic. I'm gonna plug in the USB. What I'm doing is just plugging in that USB USB thumb drive. It says press Y to reset TFTP. To reset FTPM. So that, yeah, we're gonna do that because we don't want the old one. All right, and then we're gonna want the BIOS. I'm hitting the delete key. The delete key will get you into the BIOS on most motherboards if it decides to want to reboot. This may take a minute to even reset that TFTPM. By the way, that's just basically for Windows 11 at this current time. That's to give you Windows 11 support. We're loading Windows 10 on this just because Windows 11 is just not there yet, in my opinion. This is really boring. You guys are gonna see a lot of black screen going on until I get into the damn BIOS. There we go. BIOS has been reset. Please reconfigure BIOS setup items if needed. That's okay. That's what happens when you have a new processor. It's just what it does. We log in. We're going to see that we've got... Always check everything first. Make sure that everything is loaded correctly. So to do that, in Gigabyte, there is a screen over here that's hidden. If you just go over it, it'll tell you your CPU, your memory, your voltages, your temperature. I would double check more temperature and make sure that your processor is matching the proper processor, which it is. Yes, it is. Sorry, I had to look at the box. All right, so now what we're gonna do quickly check a few things. We're gonna do the BIOS update first. So we're gonna go to the BIOS. I'm gonna shut my screen. I'm gonna put myself over here or something. There we go. So we've got QFlash, but what I won't want to do is I don't want to go right into QFlash. I want to double check what the BIOS is currently. So I'm going to use the mouse over. I'm going to go over to BIOS and just double check. Is it BIOS? System. I'm sorry, System. And we have a BIOS version F62. What you don't know is that I already loaded the BIOS onto this USB flash drive, the newest one, which is I think 62C, I think it is. I went to the manufacturer, the manufacturers of the motherboard, and then I just downloaded the BIOS, the most current one. You always get the most current stuff before you load. Before you load any BIOS, though, make sure that you are plugged into a UPS battery. What you don't see here is that I have a UPS battery over there somewhere on the floor that's running all the power over here. So be sure you're on a battery before you start this, because if you lose power, you will have a very bad day. It will brick your motherboard. It will be a very bad day. So we want to update the BIOS, so hit update BIOS. We're going to select the new one, which is 63C. That's the one I've got loaded. There's other files on here. I mean, you know, this is a regular flash drive, so it's just, it has date on it. So we're going to do 63C, which is the newest one. Then you go next. Verifies the file. It says push to start. It says do. It updates the BIOS. Now, at this point, do not touch the keyboard or mouse. Hands off. Do not mess with anything. Just leave it go. Don't look at it weirdly. Just let it update. By the way, it'll tell you all the information on the left side. By the way, you'll see on the left side of the screen, you got current flash, update BIOS, and it says which one you currently have, which is the F62. Now we're going to F63C. The BIOS date for this one is 7/20/22, which is really new. The checksum, you know, if you really care for that, you can figure that out. The checksum just basically means that it's verifying that, you know, that file came from Gigabyte. You can retake that information and match it to what they have on Gigabyte to make sure that the file wasn't interrupted during your download and that you don't have a hacked BIOS or something. All right, this should take a few minutes. Once it goes through, we're going to then load Windows, and then that's about it for the live stream after that. So we're just going to wait on updating. Oh, I got to change the XMP memory. So you may also, if you have XMP RAM, you're going to change it up to the XMP RAM to 3200 megahertz if that is the speed of it, which I am going to double check while we wait. This doesn't say 3200. Maybe we only bought regular. It doesn't really matter too much, not for this type of system. But if you do have XMP, you want to turn it on. Usually it says it right on the box. This one does not. But I could have sworn I boot. Okay, reboot. If you reboot, just a reboot. It may take a extra second to reboot. During all this time of installation, you want to make sure that you're just very patient. You don't want to be impatient at all, because if you're impatient, you might make a mistake and let it, you know, it might do something more funky on you. So just wait. It's going to do weird reboots because it's going to recheck the RAM. It's going to recheck a lot of things constantly. This stuff will go away once you're basically ready to, you know, when you have the system loaded. I'm just going to check a few things. I'm just going to make sure that everything's pretty much on auto for here, the XMP memory. Let me try profile one. It's saying 3200. I'm going to go with it. Let's see what we go with it. If it goes, it works. If it doesn't work, you know, no harm or foul. We'll just reload it. We'll just change it back down to lower. So AMD quiet cool function, sure. Just make sure everything's pretty much on auto. You don't want to make sure that things are correct. Make sure your XMP memory is really the one thing that you want to set. If there's other settings you want to play with, you know, you can sit here and go through each one and, you know, really dial in, you know, voltages and stuff like that. I don't recommend that. That's usually overclocking, and you may end up with an unstable system or maybe even damage the system. So the things that you're really concerned with in here are going to be your smart fan controls, your Q flash, which will allow you to flash the BIOS, and you want to also make sure your XMP memory is set. So let's go to smart fan just to make sure it looks right. Okay, some things are wrong here. Temperature is good, but there is no warning temperature on. So we're going to say CPU temperature. We're going to say, let's not let it go over 90. That's a little high, but let's do that anyway. CPU fan fail warning, yes. I don't know why that's off. That's stupid. All right, so just in case if your fan becomes unplugged or it stops working, it'll give you a little warning to let you know that. Now the fan speed's right at 974, 975 RPM. The temperature's at 31 degrees Celsius. That's a beautiful temperature for this processor, especially at idle. Everything else, chipset 39, everything else looks okay. 28, 37, that's fine. You know, you don't have to worry about that. If anything is going hot on that, it'll probably show red anyway. CPU fan control, just leave it on normal speed unless you don't care for noise. If you don't care for noise, you can turn it up to, you know, full speed. It will make a lot of noise though for your fans. So I recommend normal. Don't go silent, because if you go silent, well, you can go silent if you have really high-end fans or a little bit bigger fans, because then they can run a little slower. But I would recommend normal, just leave it normal. Leave everything else auto, it's fine. Then what you want to do, check the date and time. Make sure the date and time are set correctly, which is not correct. 9/27/27, 2022. And then system time is 18:37. It's should be 6:37 p.m. here, so that's good. BIOS, okay, so on the boot, you want to boot off the, I have a Samsung drive in there, so it's a flash drive. I want to plug it into my flash drive. You want UEFI, make sure you're on UEFI. The second boot option, disable for now. Disable the second boot option. Just only put one boot option so you know which way you're booting. The system should not boot using some other weird funky thing, so force it one direction. Storage boot option control, legacy only, that's fine. Everything else is fine. So move over, initially PCI Express slot 1. Yeah, I usually leave that on just in case we add a graphic card later. Trusted Computing 2.0. This is the TPM module. I would leave this the way it is, and if you set it within Windows, you can change it if you want later on. NVMe configuration, just double check to make sure that your drive is showing up, which we have one. You don't need to run a test on it. I mean, if you want to, you can run that long test. I usually run the test, but we're gonna save you guys a bunch of torture and not watch, you know, numbers change. We're gonna disable the serial port because we are not using it. USB configuration. USB serial port is just a really old serial port. You really don't need it. Less on is better off. Double check everything. Everything looks fine there. So just gonna jump over to save and exit. So just, and by the way, I'm using the arrow keys to go left and right. You don't see that here, but that's what I'm doing. And then you just basically say, okay, I want to save and exit, hit enter. Do you want to save and restart? Yes. It'll reboot. Again, the reboots might still be weird until you get Windows fully loaded. So expect that. That's just gonna happen. They may take a little longer, they may take a little less time, it depends. Now we're loading Windows 10 Professional. I don't recommend Windows 10 Home. I only recommend Windows 10 Professional at this point, just because the product works better. Windows Home just doesn't work 100% the way I would like it to work. All right. If you're on this screen, you're ready to install Windows. You could choose either English, United States, you know, you choose what you need to choose. So in this case, that's set for me already. So hit next, you hit install now. If you are from a different country and you have a different language, I would recommend selecting that so at least all of this is in the right language. I don't have a product key at this point in time. I'm going to just say this because we do have a product key for this customer, but I don't want to enter that on live stream. That's probably not a good idea. So I'm just going to say I don't have a product key. It's going to ask you for what version you want. I'm going to want Windows 10 Pro. There are different ones here. There's an N version. Do not choose that. Do not choose any N version. The N version is like a simplified version. Just choose the regular one. If you have an education license, to choose the educational one. If you have a home license, you could choose a home license. I still recommend Pro just because it works better. So hit next. Pro is a little bit bigger installation, so I recommend at least a 500 gigabyte drive so you have a little bit of extra room. We're going to do a custom installation, not an upgrade. We're going to select the hard drive that is in the machine, which it only came up with one. If you have multiple drives, if you noticed, they do not label the drives. So if you are unsure which drive you're going to install to, shut the machine back off at this point, pull the other drive, and then go with only the drive that you're going to install to so you don't erase the wrong drive. This will repartition this drive. So you just hit that and hit next. It's going to do its little thing. I'll start installing. During the Windows installation, do not plug in the internet if you don't want a Microsoft, if you don't want to use a Microsoft account. If you do want to use a Microsoft account, by all means plug in the internet because it's going to require it for you. But at this point in stage in time, you should probably not connect to the internet at all. It'll allow you to create a regular, simple Windows user. My head is way down there. I'm going to try to sit up more straight. There we go. So at this point, you're just watching watching it install, nothing really fancy. You wait for it to go. It's not that long, not with this system. If you notice, there's a little bit of a coil line from one of the fans in here. I'm going to double check that before I give it to the customer. I don't like that noise. It doesn't mean there's a bad fan. It just might mean that the fan might not be fully lubricated from the factory correctly. So we may put a little bit of extra lubrication on it. Or the fan might be defective. Or it may be at the wrong speed. Could be either one. We'll check both out. I don't want to waste time on a stream for that, but it's something that takes like a little bit of time to figure out. All right, once it reboots, it should reboot right onto the main hard drive, which it did because it changed the logo a little bit. It gets to installing. This is all typical when it says getting ready. It's not very, again, this is not a very exciting portion, but it is a little bit time consuming. Once you do get this uploaded and ready to go, I'm just going to show you how to get past all these few screens. And then after that, I'm going to show you how to load the drivers, which I downloaded already. And yeah, from there after that, it's pretty much updating Windows, which is really, really a long process. So yeah, I don't want to waste time on that. We'll probably end after that. It's getting ready. By the way, always be sure to license your products. You do have to put a license number in. I don't show a license number again because I'm on a live stream. I don't want to give out my customer's license number to everybody. So, that's why I'm not showing you, but you should license your products. You should put the proper information in and have a proper license for your Windows. It does take away some features if you don't license your product properly. It also gives you a grace period. It gives you like a few days to license the product. So if you do this, you can buy a license later if you need to. Select your region, common sense, we're in the United States today. Check your keyboard. If it's US, hit next. If you want to add a second keyboard, you can do that, or you can hit skip. I don't have a second keyboard. At this point, it's going to try to get you to connect to the internet. Just say I don't have internet, bottom left corner. And now what you want to do is say continue with limited setup because it still wants you to try to connect and use a Microsoft account, which gets really annoying. In this case, I'm just going to set this as user because I don't want to let anybody know my customer's information. Next. At this point, you can add a password. I'm not going to add a password just because I want to get this to go faster, but you should set a password for your computer. I recommend a 12-character one, but you do what you want. Privacy settings, we turn all this stuff off. I'm just almost set a curse word. Turn off everything that's here. You want to make sure that this is just all on off. You don't want any of that garbage. Except you don't want to have Cortana unless you want it. If you want Cortana, turn it on. I personally say no. It's annoying. Again, we build business computers, so we really don't need all those extra little fluffy things. If you want all that stuff, you can turn on anything you want, whatever you feel comfortable with. Personally speaking, though, I like to turn everything off and keep it very minimal, because the more that you keep minimal, the faster the computer can be going forward. This might take several minutes, I bet. When it says don't turn off your PC in the bottom, follow the rules. Don't turn it off in the middle of that. If you have a laptop, make sure you're plugged in during whenever it says that, so you don't run out of battery, because obviously if you see you don't have a battery notification yet or anything. So always be sure you're plugged into the wall. You don't want to lose power whenever it says don't turn off your PC, because if that happens, you're going to probably corrupt your Windows, or you can corrupt the boot up portion. It's right now making changes to sensitive files. At that point, probably security files. And by pulling the power, it's going to probably corrupt those. So you don't, I mean, Windows has been pretty resilient, but you never know. Okay, so now it's going to say everything about Edge and all this garbage. Just say cancel. You don't want to, install any of this garbage. All right, so I still have the flash drive plugged in, so I'm just going to open up Windows Explorer here. By the way, I just hit Windows key E to get to that. I'm going over to the D drive. I already have a folder called drivers. I'm just going to copy the drivers folder onto the desktop. That's all the drivers for this motherboard, as well as some installation files. So we're going to copy that over there, and we're just going to actually, you know what? Let me put this out of the way. I can't see the screen, sorry. At this point, I would load the drivers normally, but if I load those drivers, it's going to reactivate, and I don't have my key over here. So we can't do drivers. But we're at Windows. If you want, you could set up your security. You could set up your privacy settings by hitting the Windows key and I, and that'll bring up your settings page. And then you can go to your privacy settings. I'm going to go through the privacy settings at least. You can uncheck all this garbage that you don't want. I turn a lot of the diagnostic stuff off. It's just, there's nothing really here except sending stuff to Microsoft. So, try to keep this minimal. We just turn it all off. Again, you could decide what you want on and off. The biggest problem here for this one is going to be your camera. If you do a lot of Zoom meetings and you have a USB camera connected, you may want this on. In this case, I know the customer doesn't have one, so I'm going to turn it off. Same thing for the microphone. We're just going to turn off privacy settings. They don't have a camera, but you never know. If they connect one, I would prefer that they go back and turn on and review those settings before, they just have the camera always on. You want to make sure your privacy is always protected on this, and that's one of them. It doesn't protect you against every hacker to get into a camera situation, but it definitely protects you against the most, legitimate software being on the incorrect times. So, radio, other devices, I always turn all this stuff off. Background apps, again, turn it off. You only leave it on if there's something that runs in the background that needs a notification, then you would need that to leave that on. But in this case, I already know we don't. Don't want to have the system having access to this without asking. Let's go back. And what you're going to do is you're going to make sure your time zone is correct, because it's always wrong. Control panel. And then you're going to set your time zone. You would normally load all your drivers, but again, I can't do that because it's going to ask me a bunch of questions about the license, and I don't have the license. I don't want to show the license on stream, so I'm just going to do whatever I can without that. Time zone is correct. That is the wrong time. It'll resync later. It'll sync to the Windows. By the way, if you leave it default, it'll also resync to Windows, so you shouldn't have any problems. I'm going to change this to high performance for the power. This is what we normally do. We just give it a little extra oomph. Since we have an NVMe drive, we're going to turn off the power management for the hard drive. And wireless is good. Sleep. No. All of this is okay. Display, I usually like to put this up to 20 minutes just because 15 is a little annoying. And apply, and that's it for that. So go back. It's at high performance. And that's it for now. Once you connect to the internet, it'll definitely update and patch, but you should have your license before you do that because it's going to ask you for activation. And at that point, you really should enter your license, activate your Windows, and you'll also want to load your drivers. The drivers are pretty simple. Once you go online, you can just go to the manufacturer of your website. In this case, it's the Gigabyte motherboard. So I'd go to the Gigabyte, I'd drop in the model number, and it should come right up with what Windows version you want, and then select all the drivers, download them, and install them. Now, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's okay too. You can let Windows install the Gigabyte control panel, and if you do that, it'll automatically download the drivers for you for your motherboard and update them and patch them. I just don't like that feature because it's a little annoying, it's a little overhead. So if you do use that, be sure to remove the Gigabyte control panel once you get your drivers, because after you get the drivers, you don't need it checking for drivers every 10 seconds. It's just going to waste a lot of compute cycles in the background, and it'll just drive you nuts. All right, so that's it for this build. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. It is a full build for a system. If you look at, we have other customer builds. We have about 8 other ones, and we also have videos coming out hopefully every week. I'm trying to get at least a video out every week, but we are a company, so we try our best. Our next video probably be about the new AMD 7000 series processors. If you're into that, we also have a video about the launch event. The specs that came out were pretty good, so just really expensive right now. The motherboards are pretty expensive. There's a few other little things that we're going to talk about, but keep subscribed for that, and we'll see you at the next one. We're going to try to go back to live streaming every Saturday, but right now we have a hectic launch schedule, so we're trying to keep it very minimal at the current time. So that might be to be determined, but we will send out notifications. If you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, you will get a notification every time that we go live. You will also get a notification whenever we put out a video. That's if you hit the bell and turn the bell on. It'll give you a little notification. I recommend you do that if you want the most up-to-date information. We also have an email list if you want to join that. You can go to live.bootonce.com and you can sign up on there, and we also do send out emails from time to time to let you know when we're going to have an event or any type of other information being given out. So yep, that's it. We'll see you in the next one, and have a great night. If I use the right mouse. There we go. Right mouse. All right.